Well, hey, everybody. Getting ready to record Mike in the Midwest. What is today's date? The 14th of October. Let's do this. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 69 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. I'm host Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast. You know that. I know that. We're all together on that. Today is October 14th. It is a Thursday morning as I record this show. And I am just back this past weekend from the Chicago Marathon. And that will be the topic of today's show here in just a few minutes. Actually, it's not going to be a show about running at all. It's going to be more about the city of Chicago. And this show is called Mike in the Midwest. And I kind of had this discussion with my buddy Scott from up in Michigan, who you hear on the podcast many, many times. You heard him this week on the Wednesday and Friday shows. We had this discussion about Chicago. Is Chicago in the Midwest? And Scott says it is definitely in the Midwest. And to me, Chicago is very, very different from what I picture when I see Midwest in my mind's eye. It's not the same. It's different. It's very cool, but it's totally not the same. So I'll talk about that at the end of today's show. But I wonder where you fall on that, because I love how we all have terms in our minds. You know, you hear a word and in our mind's eye we have a picture, right? We draw a picture of something. And when I hear Midwest, the picture that I see is obviously where I have grown up. I see a suburban area in Missouri. Typically, when I think of Midwest, I think of the areas of Missouri that are all along Interstate 70 between St. Louis and Columbia that we travel out to Mizzou. Lots of farmland, lots of open land. Um, Along the Missouri River, lots of smaller tributaries, and just lots of open land with farms. That's what I consider the Midwest. Lots of plains and prairies and farmland. And Illinois is a lot of that. Driving between here and Chicago, you see a lot of that. And I consider, Illinois definitely the Midwest, but Chicago, metropolitan, man. I don't know. I feel like I was, a little kid in the big city. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. Let's get to the feedback though before we go too far on last week's show. I always like to start off with the feedback. If you have feedback on this week's show or any show, and I love the feedback, drop on by patreon.com/BRGuest podcast. Drop it in on today's topic there on episode 69, and we'll get to it next Thursday on episode 70s. Amy Rivers dropped in real quick. We had a lot of just quick hits here on the feedback this week. She says, listening here on Long Island, New York, participating in the Chicago Marathon is a win in itself. Best wishes. Thank you, Amy. It was a lot of fun. We'll talk about that today. Carrie Good, thanks for being a patron. Says, good luck, Mike. You got this. Fortunately, I made it. We'll talk about it. As a Constance Presley, thank you for being a patron. I love it so much that she says, go, Mike. Enjoy Chicago. I sure did. Michelle Camber, my good friend down in South Florida, thank you for being a patron. Congratulations on Chicago. I hope the weekend was so much better than you imagined. It was wonderful to catch up with you on October 1st and get to ride Splash together. Seriously, the highlight of my day. That was the highlight of my day too. So I know so much going on October 1st, but it's all about the friends, right? And as I said on the show, Michelle has been there since our very first meet at Mouse Fest back in 2008. And we talked then, and we've talked over the years, and it was just so cool that like things had come full circle. That was before the 40th even happened, and here we were on the 50th, and we're riding the Splash Mountain together. We're hanging out talking about our, my kid had been to Ireland on an exchange program. Her kid was currently in England. It's so crazy, like that we've, everything's kind of stuck together that long. So very cool seeing Michelle on October 1st. It's such a cool place. She says, you were talking about meeting people on the Skyliner and striking up conversations. When I was on the Skyliner going to Epcot that weekend, I was wearing my Give Kids the World shirt. The family in there with me noticed it and was asking if I'd been there. They said a podcast they listen to talks about it often and wanted to know if they've heard of the Be Our Guest podcast. Small world. They were hoping to meet you that weekend. Not sure if they did. Thought that was neat. How cool is that? That is such a blessing. That is such a blessing. I love Give Kids the World. You guys know that. If you ever want to help some folks out, help out the folks down in Kissimmee at Give Kids the World. They are the angels among us. And, not even monetarily. If you ever have a chance to do some volunteer work, Drop by the village. You'll be changed. We're going to talk about how a marathon can change you today. I'm not going to get into. I'm not here to recruit you. I'm not here to buy you sneakers and get you short shorts. My wife won't let me wear short shorts, and I'm glad. That's why I have a good wife. But I will tell you that you could probably run a marathon if you wanted to. You're probably saying, no, I can't. I'll give you a quick story at the end of the show. Jennifer Perry, she's one of our new patrons from Bloomington, Illinois, which we actually did drive through. Bloomington Normal, the normal football field right there on Interstate 55. Pretty awesome. I'd like to go to a football game there some Friday night. She said started listening to the podcast 2 months ago, and she's getting ready to go to Walt Disney World in January. So welcome to the club there, Jennifer. Glad to have you along. And she says she takes us along on her walks. So we sure appreciate that. And she also grew up in the 80s, she says. So there you go. Craig, I got to give a shout out to Craig. He ran the Boston Marathon. Now, I ran the Chicago Marathon, which was pretty cool. It's a major marathon, which I found out. It's a big deal. Boston, though, you have to qualify for because you have to be fast. Chicago, you got to get in because you're lucky. Boston, you have to have a super fast time. I am not near fast enough to qualify for Boston, but Craig got in and he ran Boston. So shout out to Craig Burnett. I'm so proud of him. We were going to run Chicago together, but he got in Boston. So shout out to Craig. Thank you for all your support. Craig set me up because he'd run Chicago many times. He told me what to expect, where to go, put my mind at ease through all these great emails. And it's great to have a friend like that takes the time to write you and get you set up for success, which he did. Kathy Melchin said, good luck in Chicago this weekend. Download the app, check your progress. I will say, shout out to Chicago Marathon. They had an app and it was awesome. We talk about my Disney experience at Walt Disney World, and that app's getting a lot better. I mean, when it first came out, it was kind of a mess, and now it's really, really good, I think. But the Chicago Marathon, they had an app that did everything. It had everything you might need on this one app for one day, one race, but it was great. You could track your runners. You could figure out the maps to everything. All the media, what place everybody got. It was a really great app. So shout out to the Chicago Marathon for their app. It was awesome. And Francesca Spathis said, good luck in Chicago. We'll be rooting for you, Mike. Thanks, Francesca. I appreciate that. Okay, so how about we hop into Chicago last weekend? All right, so let's talk about the fun stuff first, right? Okay, so we went last weekend. I asked my wife to take off work on Friday because they had a professional development day. She's a teacher, so she didn't have to miss teaching her kids. She did get to get out of professional development. When if you're a teacher, and I know we have lots of teachers that listen in, that's a blessing in itself, right? When you're in your 23rd year, I think it's your 24th year of teaching. I always joke with her. She's pretty fully developed when it comes to teaching kids. She knows what she's doing. So one day of missing professional development, she's going to be okay. So she got to miss PD. So it was kind of nice. So on Friday, we drove up to Chicago, and from St. Louis, it's about a 5-hour drive. Ended up being a 6-hour drive because we had to drop Superdog Riley off at her sister-in-law's house so she could, stay over there for the weekend. And Mallory stayed with a friend because she was cheering and she had a party at a friend's house all weekend. She was glad to do her thing. So we got to go have kind of a couples weekend up in Chicago. So we drive up. It's a super easy drive from St. Louis to Chicago, the old Route 66 up Interstate 55. And we discovered a cool place. If you ever drive that route between St. Louis and Chicago, there's a new place. I just got to shout this out here on the show for you. If you're ever there, there's a new gas station. It's called Wally's. Now, I don't know if you know me at all from the podcast over the past 10 years. When I drive on road trips, I always love stopping at truck stops. I like Loves and Pilots because they're almost like little cities, right? They have a couple of restaurants in them, little fast food restaurants, use like a Subway or a Taco Bell or an Arby's or something. And they got little stores where you can buy stuff, souvenir type stuff. They have candy and, hot items you can buy if you want to, donuts. I don't know. I just love kind of stopping at truck stops. Well, this Wally's was called the Great American Road Trip Stop. What it was, basically, it's a truck stop, but it's not made for 18-wheelers. It's like a truck stop for four-wheelers, for regular cars. And it's got everything you would need for the road trip. So it's got board games and beef. They had a whole wall of different jerkies, like beef jerkies and turkey jerkies. And they had barbecue and they had ice creams. And oh my gosh, they had every kind of soda and chips and just all kinds of games, just stuff you could take, souvenir shirts and stuff. Very cool. It was in Pontiac, Illinois, and it's the only one there is right now. There's going to be a new one in Fenton, Missouri, which is south of St. Louis on Interstate 55. That'll be their second location. If you ever get a chance to stop at a Wally's, it's pretty cool. It was pretty cool. So we did that on the way up. Oh, and also we got lunch at Burger King on the way up. They had a freestyle Coke machine, whatever. Okay, so we get to Chicago. First mistake. Rolling to Chicago on a Friday during rush hour. Whoo, baby. Remember, I'm not from the big city. Yeah, Chicago on a Friday at around 4:30 trying to get into the city was a bad idea. A lot of rush hour traffic. We sat in traffic for about 20 miles, but we finally got in. We went to the McCormick Center, which is a big, I guess, convention center that they have where the expo is, where you pick up your goodies, you get your bib, you can buy your stuff. Well, here's the deal. I got to tell you this. This is a good one. So of course you're driving, it's a 5-hour drive, you're talking, you're listening to the radio and so forth, but you're thinking while you're going down the interstate, right? I'm sitting there thinking, about what I packed and, what shoes I might wear because I did a 5K on Saturday and I was doing the marathon on Sunday, how the temperature is going to be, what I'm going to wear. All of a sudden it hit me. Oh, I forgot to pack all of my shorts. I had all my running shorts in one pile and I knew that I forgot to throw those in my suitcase. So here I am driving up Interstate 55. We're like 150 miles from home at this point. We're closer to Chicago than St. Louis. The only shorts that I have with me are my khaki shorts that I'm wearing. So I have, I'm like, oh, you're kidding me. I'm gonna have to run in khaki shorts. I'll be like the biggest, dummy out there running in khaki shorts. I didn't sweat it because I knew once you go to the expo, you can buy anything for running gear. So I did end up buying two pair of shorts at the expo, which it's kind of a good thing, right? At the expo, they always have like racks and racks of like 50% off gear that they want to get rid of, all these running stores. So I got, two pairs of shorts. They're both half off. They're like dirt cheap. Some brand I'd never heard of, but who cares? They're shorts. They're shorts. So I got two pair of black shorts, problem solved, no problem. Yeah, got a couple, Chicago Marathon shirts, but yeah, we got there. The expo was huge and just kind of walked around it and, got, like I said, got a couple of souvenir shirts and then we went to our hotel. So I had, again, I'm super comfortable with races at Disney because I know all the hotels, I know the parks, I know everything about the logistics of everything. I was so nervous about this, not only because of the race. I knew nothing about the race, but I knew nothing about I'd seen the hotel on a map and I'd seen a couple of pictures on like Orbitz or something or Expedia for the hotel because I booked it through the Chicago Marathon website and I knew it was a Sheraton and I knew it was super expensive because all the hotels in Chicago are expensive. It was crazy. And we had 2 nights there. And so I followed the directions on the iPhone to get there. And of course, here's the thing. Here's another thing you learn when you're not from the big city. Your iPhone is almost useless when it comes to driving directions once you get downtown inside the tall buildings because your GPS can't really, it's always getting confused. Because in Chicago, we were on a lot of roads that were kind of underground, like we were in tunnels and like there's like double-decker roads and huge buildings all around you. And so the GPS, Siri's telling me, do a U-turn. I'm like, do a U-turn. I can see the hotel. Like it's down the street. I can see the top of it. Do a U-turn. I'm like, that's not right. It was so confusing. And I know I sound like I know and I apologize. I sound like I don't, like I'm totally uneducated and I don't know my way around, but I really truly don't go to the big city a lot, and I know that, I mean, I have a master's degree, right? I am educated. I can find my way around, but I mean, I don't go to a big city that often. So it does kind of give you a little anxiety when you are in a big city where I swear my wife and I commented on this too. There's constantly like honking going on, like in downtown Chicago, and there's always sirens. Like we felt like in the hotel, we heard sirens all the time. And it wasn't probably like crime. We're not saying it was crime, but it's probably because we were very near the fire station. The fire station was, we saw it because I walked past it like 2 blocks away. And so, it's probably fire trucks going out to help, people that are sick or, accidents happening and so forth. I mean, it's a huge city, lots of people, right? But it was just, we're suburban. Like we live way out west of St. Louis City. We're 20 miles away from the city out in the suburbs. It's quiet where we live. I mean, we have deer that come by. We hear crickets and frogs at night. We don't hear sirens or honking or anything. I guess that's why we're sensitive to it. So anyway, we're driving around. I see the hotel. We get there and this hotel is huge. I mean, well, I thought it was huge. It was like 20 stories tall. So it was a big hotel, right? A big Sheraton. We get a hotel room on the 10th floor. Nice hotel room, double beds, kind of surprised me, small beds, but two double beds, real nice room, was fine. And right on the Chicago River, which if you're a child of the 80s, right? Chicago River, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? Diet Green on St. Patrick's Day. I loved all this. You walk right past the Chicago Institute of Art. Again, another Ferris Bueller reference there. So it was kind of cool to kind of have those references. So, we checked into the hotel. We, got all that stuff. I knew I was running a 5K that next morning. So once we kind of got settled, we needed to get something to eat that night. And here's the difference between where we live and being in a big city. Now, if you are from New York City or if you're from Chicago and I know we have lots of listeners that live in, huge cities. Here's the difference. And we notice this the whole weekend. Like when I'm hungry, here's what I'm used to doing and what we do. I go out to my garage, I jump in my Jeep, and I can literally be to 20 fast food restaurants in 5 minutes or less. We live in a very we live in a suburban area where I'm right near 20 fast food restaurants: Dairy Queen, Taco Bell, Burger King, McDonald's, Lion's Choice, Chick-fil-A, Penn Station, Chipotle, doesn't everything, Jimmy John's. Everything is right here. I mean, everything. I could be there in 5 minutes in my Jeep. The thing is, when I was in Chicago, for one, there's like no fast food downtown. You got to go like to more fancy places. And like you got to walk everywhere or take an Uber or something. Like it was all walking. And the whole thing was I was trying not to walk a whole lot because I knew I was running a marathon on Sunday. So we did find this real nice burger joint that was in we found this real good burger joint it was in the lobby of our hotel. I'm trying to find the name of the place. I think it was called the Chicago Burger Company. And it was really good because we didn't have to walk too far. We got to have good burgers. And the thing was our hotel was right on the Chicago River. So there was outdoor seating. So we got to sit right there on the Chicago River. I mean, it was nighttime. All these huge hotels across the water these hotels across the water were like 80 stories tall. I mean, huge hotels, like no kidding, 80, 90 stories tall, all lit up. I mean, it was like to me what it must look like in New York City. It was gorgeous. Boats going back and forth down the Chicago River, with like tourists on them. It was amazing. I mean, this was like, again, I don't travel a lot. My wife and I don't. We go to Disney a lot, but it was like, scene out of a movie. We're eating these nice burgers and fries on the Chicago River, boats going back and forth, all these huge buildings in the background, their lights on. And of course you're hearing all the honking and the sirens, but it was a very metropolitan kind of experience. We love that first night. So the next day I get up, 5K race, very fun. I walk over to the start line. I don't know where I'm going. I just get my map out and I kind of try to find my way over because I knew it was over kind of by Grant Park is where it started. And I knew Grant Park was 1 mile from my hotel. I could read a map, so I followed the map. I did go the wrong way because I went under the streets, like in this tunnel kind of thing, and it was sketch. It was super sketch. I got really nervous about halfway through it, but I went real fast. The next day when I went to the full marathon, I went over it and it was much better. But I got there and ran the 5K. It was a lot of fun. It was 3 miles, and we got to. The cool thing is, in the 5K, we got to run under the L tracks, which if you don't know the L, it's like the subway in Chicago. And we got to run under this long stretch of the L that I know was the part that was in the Blues Brothers, where they come into Chicago from Joliet. And it was that was so cool. And you could hear the L running over the top of us. It was so Chicago. I loved it. Like I was smiling the whole time. I was like, this is so cool. So we got to do that. We ended at the Chicago Stock Exchange or something, Board of Trade. We ran past the Chicago Theater too, so that was a lot of fun. And on the way home, I didn't even realize it, but I walked past the Bean, so I had to get my picture by the Bean because you got to get your picture at the Bean, right? So that was done on Saturdays. Again, Sunday was the full marathon. We had the rest of the day on Saturday to kind of see Chicago, and I didn't want to walk a lot because I knew it'd be running, and it was going to be super hot on Saturday. So they didn't do the Chicago Marathon last year because of COVID. It was canceled. So all of the news channels in Chicago were doing stories about the Chicago Marathon because it's big. 35,000 runners run this race. So all the local news, every station was doing stories on the Chicago Marathon. It was the lead story on all the news. So you saw it on all the TVs that were all around Chicago. And all the stories were like, the heat is on for the Chicago Marathon 2021. And they were just talking about how everybody's going to be dying the next day because it's going to be so hot. And so I'm thinking, oh, great. I'm already nervous about this race. My first marathon that's not at Disney, and I don't know what's going on. And it's going to be hot. And it was hot, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So I knew I had to kind of chill out, not, I didn't want to walk 10, 15 miles on Saturday and then run a marathon on Sunday. So we saw these big boats going down the Chicago River, and they have a person on the top deck with a microphone, and they're talking about all the buildings that are all around the Chicago River on the skyline. And that looked really cool. And also, I'll give a shout out to Matt Parrish from What Away Radio and the 3028. He's mentioned this architectural boat tour on his show many times. So I thought, you know what, we're doing this because it's great, right? We'll be sitting down. It's a 75-minute boat tour. I think it was like $40. And you get on there and they just take you up and down the Chicago River and they talk to you about all the buildings. And like the cool thing is I'm not as into architecture and art as a lot of people. It's not that I don't appreciate it. It's just that I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't have a history in art. Like I took a couple art classes in college because I had to. Um, but I'm more of like a practical kind of guy. I don't know. I like looking at it, but I just don't have the knowledge to know like what I'm looking at. And the cool thing is that as soon as we got on the boat, this docent that came on and spoke to us about the buildings was so engaging with his stories. And I mean, he was speaking to probably 300 people on this boat, and he made it relatable. What he said, first of all, was that these huge buildings, right? These gigantic buildings that were, some of them 60, 70, you had the Sears Tower or the Willis Building, over 1,000 feet tall. They're works of art, and I didn't think about it like that. I think of them as practical places where people work, people live, things like that. But he said, no, 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 no. Think about it. Like each one of these is in an artistic style. They're the black box or they're art deco or they are, just all these other terms, which I should know, but I can't get them off the top of my head right now. But, he talked about how, certain balconies on one building would be at a certain level because that's where the building next to them topped off. And I would have never noticed that, but how one building led into the next and led into the next. One color of a building caused the color of the building next to it to change. It was very cool. And it made me appreciate that, when I came into Chicago, what I saw was tall buildings. And I joked with Pam, I said, you can tell the people like us that are not from Chicago and that are not like from New York City or not from Los Angeles or, many other cities with big tall buildings. You can see people like us because we're always looking up. And I was for the most part the whole weekend. I have so many pictures. I'm looking at my iPhone right now of all these tall buildings because they were so incredibly cool. But the whole time, seriously, at the end of the night, my neck was hurting because I was always looking up like, wow, like those buildings are amazing. They are so tall. They are so like, how do they even get the material up 1,000 feet in the air to build these buildings? And so it was a very cool way to see the city of Chicago from a boat, sitting down with a docent that was passionate about sharing his love of his city through art and through architecture. So if you ever go to Chicago, I highly recommend doing this boat tour right on the Chicago River. I think it was called Shoreline Boat Tours. So give that a shot. Okay, so we did that. After that, we had to get some authentic Chicago food, and we'd eaten here before with the Gardeners. We went to a place called Geno's East Pizza, and this is authentic Chicago style deep dish pizza. It We'd gotten this before a few years back, actually in 2017, and we got the big pizza. We got appetizers. Almost killed us. Pam and I were smart this time. It was just us two. We got a small pizza, and we couldn't even finish the small pizza. I had two pieces and I was so done. That pizza is so filling. It's so thick, but it was so good. And this is the place where, if you don't know, you can write on the walls, you can write on the booths, you can really write on anything in this whole restaurant. It's got graffiti all over the place. You kind of leave your mark. but it takes 55 minutes if you order a deep dish pizza for them to prepare it. But it is so worth the wait. So if you ever get a chance, if there's a couple locations in Chicago, Geno's East Pizza, very, very good. Now the problem was that I was so full from Geno's East that we had this for kind of lunch about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I should have kind of had a big, not a big meal for dinner, but something at least for dinner. But I was full all the way up until it was time to go to bed that night. And I needed to kind of have something to fuel me for the 26 miles the next day. So come about 7 o'clock, I still really wasn't hungry, but I knew I needed to eat something, but I didn't want to walk really far. Again, this is where I would have hopped in my Jeep and ran down to Pasta House or someplace like that here in St. Louis and picked up some, toasted raviolis or something like that, or, order a pasta and come home. Not a lot of choices because we had to walk really far to get anything. But we did find an Irish bar that was adjacent to our hotel, and um they had wings, which I knew wings is not a great idea before a marathon, but I ate like 3 or 4 lemon pepper wings just to have something. And we did that. And so that was kind of it for the night. Again, right on the Chicago River. Enjoyed that on Saturday night. So Sunday morning, get up, time for the Chicago Marathon. I was walking over again. There's 30 some thousand people that run this race. It tells you where to go in, depending on your start corral, like which street to go down. It was cool because you just walk out of your hotel and there's just people everywhere. You don't have to worry about finding anything. You just kind of follow the herds. You get in there, you get into your corral, and lots of lizards there. I got to run with Neil. Shout out to Neil Hurd, who did a good job, and lots of other lizards that were there. Amazing. Got to meet Anna. She was there. Got to hang out before the start of the race, but wow, was I nervous before this one started. I don't know why. I don't really get that nervous before the Disney races, but this one I was really, really nervous. I mean, I knew it was super hot to start. It was super hot even before we started running. This one didn't start till 8 o'clock. Typically, Disney races start at 6. When I start running at home, I start at 5:30. So I'm done by this time typically, and we haven't even started yet. I knew we had to go for a long time. Just highlights of the race. It was nice not knowing what to expect. I didn't even really look at the course. I never really did. I just kind of went with the flow. They shot off the buzzer. I followed the herd. My wife was waiting at mile 1 right outside of our hotel. Got to give her a hug and a kiss. It was awesome. Got a picture and just enjoyed the scenery and enjoyed seeing Chicago with mobs of people on both sides of the road. If you've ever run a Disney race, if you ever run the marathon or the half marathon at a Disney race, when you run through the TTC, it's really loud because there's a lot of people on both sides. There's cowbells, there's vuvuzelas, there's marching bands. It's awesome for that 500 yards. Imagine that for 20 miles at least in the Chicago Marathon. The cool thing, they tout the Chicago Marathon is one of the greatest marathons in the world because of the people that come out to cheer. They said they estimated some years they have up to 7 million people that come out to cheer this race, and I would not doubt it. You run through 29 different neighborhoods over 26.2 miles. So you run through Little China. You run through a pocket of Latino folks. You run through just every kind of ethnic part of Chicago during this race. And each of these little neighborhoods comes out and just supports the runners so strongly. They're giving out cervezas when you're running through Little Mexico. It was awesome. Beating the drums, vuvuzelas, Mexican flags. Everybody was waving them. DJs, and I mean, China and Little China. The dancers were there, and I mean, it was amazing. Like it was just every turn. It wasn't so much like the difference between this and running a Disney race is with Disney, you have all the Disney characters, the IP that you know and love. You're running through these castles. You're running under Spaceship Earth. I mean, it's amazing. Don't get me wrong. I love the Disney races. I mean, I have a wall full of memories from my Disney races. But Chicago it was grassroots, right? It was people that were literally coming off their front porches and giving you what they had in their cupboards because they wanted to see you succeed. We had families that were making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at mile 21 just so you could make it to the finish. I mean, this was like, hit you in the heart, man. These people were there. It was hot for them too. I mean, it was hot and it was humid because with running, there's green, yellow, red, and black flags. And that's kind of the alert system for how great the conditions are for running. Obviously, you want a green day, cool, everything's good. Yellow, be alert. Red, things are looking pretty bad. Black, they're going to stop the race. This race started on a yellow, and 20 miles in, it went to red. It was miserable as far as heat and humidity, but we made it. But the people being out there made this race amazing. And the thing is, I said I put a tweet out a couple days ago on Twitter, and I'm just saying, consider it one time. I didn't run my first marathon until I was 40. So I had missed all of my prime running, years. I didn't do it in my 20s, didn't do it in my teens, didn't even do it in my 30s. I didn't run my first marathon until I was in my 40s. And I'm telling you, you can do it. It's hard. Running a marathon is hard, but it will change you and it will give you perspective on any other thing that you do. Like when you get a tough assignment at work, it's not quite as tough when you realize that you've run a marathon because you've suffered through mile 22, 23, 24. Those miles are horrible. But then you hit mile 26.1, you're like, "Oh, but it didn't get me. I made it through. I powered through. I made it." And you can make it through other things in your life, the other obstacles. And so it's also that way with the training because the race day, that you've made it through all those training months before. You've gotten up early for months and months and months. You've put on those sneakers, you've gotten the blisters, you've had the hamstring that's pulled on you for weeks, but you've made it through that even. And so, start with a 5K, do a 10K. But if you're willing to try it, because again, never in my wildest dreams would I have thought I've ever done a marathon. I'm not the kind of person that I would have thought I would have. But I just want to tell you, you can do it. I'm not some super athlete. When I saw a video that the Nymans took of me, and thanks to the Nymans for being out there and cheering us on during the race, our lizards from up in Chicago. In my mind's eye, I thought I was moving super fast at mile 13 when I was going past the Sears Tower. I saw the video. I look like I'm a 95-year-old fart just barely walking. I'm barely moving, but I'm moving. That's as good as I can go. And I'm telling you what, we got there. So think about it. Just something to think about. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe it's not. But I'm telling you what, if you take on that challenge, if you run a marathon, it will change your perspective on things for the rest of your life. You will never see things the same. When you cross that finish line, people said this and it is absolutely true. It will Crossing that marathon finish line will change you forever. Just something to think about. Thanks for hanging with me today. Again, Chicago, is it the Midwest? I don't know. It's not my Midwest. It's not the Midwest I grew up in. I guess geographically it is. But to me, it's more New York City. And it's pretty cool. I had a good time up there. It's a lot of fun. But after 2 days, I was ready to get home to my Jeep and be able to go places that I wanted to where things were not so expensive. But it was a lot of fun. And would I run Chicago again? Absolutely. It was amazing. Thank you guys for all the support. Thanks for cheering me on. I'm glad I could make it and support us all up there. And we'll be back again next Thursday with another Mike in the Midwest. I appreciate you so very much. So until we get together again next Thursday, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon. You're listening to Midwest. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome